The North American Stellantis models, Jeep, Ram, Dodge, and even Chrysler.
2024, shares have fallen by more than half.
They're not selling.
Jeep's incentives have been extreme this year. Sales are drastically down, 42% on the sales of the average Jeeps from 5 years ago.
Money became the top priority.
We're seeing the decline year over year, and incentives are on the climb. The vehicles are not selling, people are not buying them. What's going on? Can Jeep survive? What's the future like? Well, let's talk about that. There's no shocker, the day's supply has been rising for any of these Stellantis products, Jeep, Dodge, Ram, and Chrysler, which is just a minivan. A lot of the vehicles are not selling, primarily because cost and quality.
A lot of these vehicles clearly are not selling. We're seeing inventory, Jeeps, Dodges, you see Durangos, we see Wranglers piling up.
And of course, the quality's gone down, recalls every which way from Sunday. You're talking potential fire hazards for plug-in hybrid Wranglers, the recons, something that's been brewing. And yet, these vehicles are not selling because of more than just quality issues. It's the pricing. Pricing has been through the roof. And Stellantis has felt that Jeep can be promoted as more of a luxury product. But vehicles like the Wranglers is not a luxury vehicle, it's an off-roader. So there's preaching to the choir. When you're looking for a vehicle to go off-roading, you don't expect to spend $80,000 and have leather seats.
A lot of these Jeeps haven't been selling all that well until they put mass amounts of money simply because of the strict cost of a lot of these vehicles. Well, here we have a Rubicon Jeep Wrangler. This is the four-door version. Obviously 4xe, we get the hard top, it's beautiful. But what do we have right here? These are not going to be cheap. And it's a Wrangler Rubicon X 4xe. It has a pile of options. Look, base sticker, $73,770. But the grand total, I can't believe this. $85,655. That's absolutely ridiculous.
See, they're preaching to the wrong group. Then, of course, along comes the Wagoneer, this full-fledged, full-scale, large, upscale SUV. But who's buying that? I mean, if people are spending $125,000, they're looking at a BMW, Audi, or Lexus. They're not thinking Jeep. And even the Jeep Grand Cherokee in certain high trim levels, we're seeing those up over $100,000 Canadian. Vehicles like the Compass, I've personally seen them at $55,000, absolutely out of touch with the core buyer. Somebody looking for a cheap, affordable SUV. Clearly not affordable, cheap indeed, and there's no buyers.
Probably sent out a lot of garbage.
When Stellantis bought us, immediately I saw the difference.
Vehicles like the Cherokee have been discontinued a couple of years ago because they just weren't selling. The Grand Cherokees, although popular, is chock full of technology and, of course, more woes when it comes to recalls and reliability challenges. Sales have been so bleak in 2024 that two of the most popular brands by the Jeep manufacturer, the Wrangler and the Jeep Grand Cherokee, were put on hiatus for a few days just to slow production so they could backfill and get the vehicles to the dealers' lots. I mean, the dealers were filling up the lots. People were parking their vehicles on curbs, roadside, parking them in the ditches just to find extra space for them. Trucks were showing up after trucks are showing up. Of course, allocations were piling up. The dealers couldn't handle anymore, and yet the OEM said, no, you've got to sell these, and they kept pushing them out to the field.
How long can this chaos go on with these dealers charging this sort of money? We saw back during the shortages in 22 that Stellantis thought they, in all their infinite wisdom, would get ahead of all of the other car manufacturers. During the shortages, they went double time on production to get vehicles to market. And it backfired. They put too many vehicles, they jacked up their prices, and now we're seeing these prices are a slap in the face to the consumer. Oh, $100,000.
The sad part is they weren't moving the metal quick enough, and unfortunately for Jeep, they were just piling up. Days supply was rising. Incentives, even though they were rising, still weren't selling enough products. You know, with incentives of $5,000, $7,500, $10,000, even more, still was not enough to get people in the door to buy these vehicles. Again, touted as something that's more luxury branded, people weren't interested in that. When they think Jeep, they think off-roading, capability, four-wheel drive system. They don't think luxury, and they don't want to pay Audi dollars for a Jeep product. So I have a few projections of what I believe the future for the brand of Jeep actually looks like. Can they survive this downfall, this constant decline, and this race to the bottom in terms of sales? Does Jeep even have a future in North America or anywhere in the globe? Well, the long answer is yes. The short answer is really not so much. And really a big part of that has to do with how they survive, the products they continue to push out, and how they intend to focus on the buyers and targeting the right buyers for the right product. I do see some drastic changes coming for the brand. We know that some aggressive measures are being taken by Stellantis to try to sell a lot of these products. We know, I believe truly, that we're going to see a shift in some of the different parts and pieces. And when I say that, I ultimately mean the specific models. It's just like the Wagoneer of the past. Wagoneers came and they went. And I truly believe, in my own personal opinion, the Wagoneer is going to be something that we're going to be watching sail into the market and then slowly drift on out. Because as sales continue to look pathetic, sad, and depressing for the brand, it's very, very difficult to ignore the fact that pouring money down this proverbial money pit just doesn't seem like the appropriate move when the company is hemorrhaging money. So brands specifically, or models specifically, like the Wagoneer, with poor sales, high incentives, and the fact that they've got some very stiff competition from BMW, Audi, Benz, just clearly means that they're out of their element.
Ram and Jeep just can't sell their vehicles. I mean, look at the lot. Look at all these trucks we have here. Look at all the trucks down there, as well as look at all these Jeeps. There's no shortage of Jeeps. Look, even this, for example, we have a 4xe. That's a great looking unit. And obviously it's a Wrangler Rubicon X 4xe, and wow, $86,000. That's clearly, the prices are way too high. There's an elephant in the room, and we'll discuss that in a second. But here we see all these Jeeps. We've got Willys, we've got Wranglers of all shapes and sizes, a Sahara here with a beautiful top, all kinds of Jeeps to suit your needs. And obviously over here we have this beautiful Rubicon. Here's another one. This is a 4x4. What a beautiful looking rig, and we're talking $64,000 for that. How about over here? This is more of a base model. This clearly has plastic, simple, basic, no running gear. It's basically, yeah, it does have a hard top on here, but it's a very simple unit. And clearly it's a sport, Wrangler 4-door Sport S 4x4. Wow, $67,000.
And in my own personal opinion, I think the future for the Wagoneer is short and very limited. The Jeep Grand Cherokee, as well, a very difficult seller. While it's one of the most popular models, it clearly fills with recalls and deficiencies. It just has a very limited future ahead of it as well. Now, with that said, if Stellantis in fact feel that they want to get that vehicle on par and get it back to the customer's hands, I believe some really aggressive marketing has to be taken care of. They have to look at the pricing, they have to rethink the buyer, and they have to decide, do they want to sell volume or profits? Well, we already know people are getting tired of the profits, right? People are getting tired of spending high dollars. We're seeing the market shift already. That's why companies like Nissan and Mitsubishi, and the Mirage and the Versa and Versa Notes have been very popular in the last few years. Primarily because these high profit margin, high dollar SUVs that we're seeing from brands like Jeep and many others means that people just don't have the money or don't want to spend it. So you're seeing this tidal shift going from high dollar SUVs down to low dollar SUVs and smaller subcompact cars. So what does that mean for vehicles like the Wagoneer? Bye-bye. And how about the Grand Cherokee? Well, the Grand Cherokee is going to have to be looked at from another perspective. Lower trim levels, possibly cutting back on costs, relook at the dollars, and reconfigure how much a consumer can actually spend on these vehicles, because people don't have the money. And with interest rates that don't look to be changing anytime soon, even Jeep Grand Cherokee has a potential for failure. What about another model, like the Cherokee? Well, we know the Cherokee was discontinued, and there was rumors that the Cherokee was going to come back, rebadged, renamed, and brought back as a pure electric vehicle. We know Stellantis was going all in with electrification. They wanted to bring an electric Recon, which is a Wrangler. They wanted to bring a fully electric Wagoneer S. They want to bring and advance a lot more electrification to the market. And while that might work in certain industries and markets, certainly in Europe seems to be more popular, and the push more aggressive CO2 emission regulations seem to be focused to get people into electric vehicles much sooner. The bottom line is, let's face it, Jeep Stellantis is primarily a North American brand, and people are just not interested. People are not adopting these. And while there is a small growth in the EV space, it just may not be enough to get people on board with these expensive Jeep products that are electrified. And then we talk about vehicles like the Compass. Well, it's quite clear that the Compass was intended to be sort of the entry level, the entry point for a Jeep. Well, I mean, the Renegade ultimately was, but the Renegade's been more or less canceled, Fiat Panda style. Now all you really have is the Compass. Well, the Compass is a disaster from a quality perspective. Pricing now is out of this world. And almost every manufacturer has found ways to up the trim levels to a point where now you can almost makes more sense to buy a premium vehicle at a lower trim level than a bottom fed vehicle like the Compass at a high trim level. People just don't see that, and they'd rather go full spec on a base Compass and wind up with a glorified fishbowl. See, the Compass is a vehicle that can be made or broken very easily. It has to be a decision made, again, by headquarters at Stellantis, whether they want to focus and target the entry-level audience, or they want to continually try to upscale this and up luxury market these vehicles and create a product with high trim levels that can reach atmospheric levels of $55,000 plus. That vehicle was never intended to be that kind of money. That's a $25,000 vehicle at best. And yet, how did they ever get there? Just like Ford and the Maverick and the Lariat, how did they ever get over $50,000? But it's happened. It's cost creep. And this is exactly what's happening in the industry, and Jeep is one of the worst culprits for it. Jeep could literally go under in a matter of months if they don't play their cards right. Then we talk about the Wrangler. 2023 and 2024, they only sold 150,000 Jeeps.
It tells me one thing: these vehicles aren't selling. There's usually only a couple reasons. They're catastrophically brutal for reliability and they have a bad reputation, which these are mediocre, so that's not the issue. The other point is price.
In the Wrangler space. Now, how do you put that in point of reference? Well, we know it's an off-roading vehicle. It's dedicated. It's basically a truck on frame made for heavy off-roading use. That was its primary objective. And it's gained a lot of popularity. A lot of people just buzz around in the streets with them because of their cool factor, the ability to take the roof and the doors off, and they're all-wheel drive and four-wheel drive, and they're good for almost every season, and they're just sort of a cool vehicle. And it's that popularity that has kept them afloat. However, things have dropped because 151,000 units in 2024 is not enough to keep the doors and the lights on. See, because when you look back a few short years ago, in 2018, Jeep sold as many as 240,000 Wranglers, and then in 2019, they sold about 228,000 Wranglers. A clear indication to go from 240 down to 150, which is 40%, 50% loss almost in a few short years. Clearly, the reputation is catching up. Clearly, the prices have gone out of control, and you can see the inversely proportional element here where as prices went up, sales went down. And this is what's going on. This is the common theme that we're seeing in Jeep.
Price has gotten so out of hand here recently with Stellantis brand because they are trying to upscale themselves. They're all trying to promote themselves as more of a luxury brand. And here we have a little Compass. Yes, nothing too fancy, basic. They're colored, nice piano gloss finishing there. Very generic set of wheels, lots of plastic finishing all over. And this vehicle here is basically one of their entry levels. The Renegade is the ultimate lowest. Is that a Panda perhaps? Either way, the Compass here is one of their lowest vehicles in terms of the pecking order in this manufacturer. Here, let's take a look. How much do you think this vehicle's cost? Here right now we have a Compass Altitude 4x4 and its stickers at $48,000. Out the door, that's $55,000. That's way too rich for me.
Now, unless Jeep decides to do something drastic, readjust their prices, and that's across the board. And I don't mean with small incentives where they say, okay, we'll give you 5% off or, $2,500 cash back and $1,000 loyalty incentive and all this nonsense. Because when you look, a lot of people are really in the place of, or in the camp of affordability.
Yeah, $88,015 as we see right there.
These days. I mean, people are more concerned about keeping a roof over their head, food in the bellies, and then spending $85,000 on a plug-in hybrid Jeep Wrangler, it just doesn't seem to fit the cards. And there's fewer and fewer people that are interested in spending their hard-earned dollars on a vehicle with heavy depreciation. So what's the future look like for Jeep? Well, in my own personal opinion, they were literally headed for bankruptcy. That's the way I see this. In its current trajectory, in its current form, if they make no other changes and continue following the path that they're following today, the company will go nowhere but underwater. And this is clearly evidenced by the fact that we've seen a 42% decline in the last 5 to 10 years. Sales are diving off a cliff, and the products just aren't moving, not enough to keep the lights on. Now, the decision ultimately is Stellantis and Jeep and how much success they want to find. If they want to continue down the path of, overcharging people, up-branding their products, they're going to follow this path of bankruptcy, in my own personal opinion. However, if they shed some of the high dollar, high trim level vehicles like Wagoneers, get down to brass tacks, simplify, reduce the amount of models, possibly get rid of a vehicle like the Compass, bring back a vehicle like a Renegade with a manual gearbox and a small 4-cylinder engine, and then scale up from a Jeep Grand Cherokee and throw in a vehicle like a Wrangler in there, then they may have a future. But that's all on the condition that they price their vehicles respectively, because currently the pricing regime is far out of touch from most buyers. As a matter of fact, things are getting even uglier. We thought they had a rough year in 2024. We know their most popular model, the Wrangler, now has finally some very stiff competition. While they did happen to outsell the Ford Bronco in 2024, we know the popularity will rise. Ford's also fighting for market share, and they'll be targeting the Jeep when it comes time to readjust pricing. 2025 looks to be a very interesting year, and competition is stiff. On top of that, Toyota now is finally coming out with the latest and greatest brand new 4Runner, where people are tired of driving these vehicles or looking at a vehicle like a Jeep or a Ford Bronco with reliability issues and recalls. They're starting to look in other places. Toyota, reliability. The brand new refreshed 4Runner is coming out this year. On top of it, there's word that the new FJ Cruiser is back. An EV version, possibly as well, maybe a manual or a 6-speed automatic driven with the 4-liter V6 may be available in a revised FJ as well. So with all of this stiff competition looming in the background that are also all dedicated off-road vehicles, and Toyota's creating some of that, it's hard to ignore the fact that with declining sales, high prices, and stiff competition waiting in the wings, what does that future look like? It's a race to the bottom. So Jeep's going to have to aggressively sharpen their pencils, trim down prices, make their vehicles more reliable, and try to improve on some of the quality challenges, reduce the amount of models. That way it saves them tooling costs and they're less concerned about all these different assembly lines and trying to manage multiple different models. They need to simplify, maybe scale back on the EV market, and we know that the EV market is inevitable. But instead of putting all your eggs in that basket, as we know Volkswagen has proven that to not work out very well, that Jeep needs to get back to basics, get back to brass tacks, sell an affordable off-road vehicle that's honest and durable. Remember the old TJs? Remember that 4-liter straight 6 with a manual gearbox? That's what they need, and they need to bring that in at $25,000. That's what the doctor ordered. The Wagoneer, in its current form, will not survive. The Jeep Grand Cherokee will not survive unless some drastic price changes are in place. So the future could be grim, the future could be bright. It all depends on how Jeep plans to rework their model lineups, readjust their pricing regime, and the time will tell. And the future, at this point, very unknown. We'll let you know. We'll keep you in on the loop. And as times go on, we'll definitely be sure to share more updates on not just the Jeep and Stellantis changes, but the market as a whole. Hope to see each and every one on the next one. See you real soon. Bye-bye.